If you look for the inventors of the first electronic computer, most history books point to Sperry Eckert and John Mauchly. Their creation was the room-sized ENIAC machine, but the legal status of that invention was challenged in a 1973 federal court case, Honeywell v. Sperry Rand. Judge Earl Larson ruled the ENIAC's creators derived their core ideas from an earlier machine built by Iowa State physics professor Dr. John Vincent Atanasoff. This verdict stripped away the primary patent claim on the electronic computer, ensuring that the machine's basic architecture could not be owned by a single entity. To understand how the computer escaped a corporate monopoly, we have to trace the architectural transfer between Atanasoff's prototype and the machine that claimed all the credit. Following the war, Eckert and Mauchly formed their own company and sought to aggressively monetize the digital computer, a move that eventually put the patent in the hands of the Sperry Rand Corporation. By the late 1960s, Sperry Rand was pressuring the entire industry, demanding a 1.5% royalty from every competitor building a computer. The financial pressure was immense. IBM settled and paid $10 million, effectively acknowledging Sperry Rand's ownership of the technology. But Honeywell refused. They launched a massive legal counteroffensive, searching for historical prior art, proof that the computer was invented before ENIAC. The stakes were clear. If Honeywell lost, one company would hold a legal chokehold on the hardware of the digital age. The search for that history leads back to 1937 at Iowa State College. Dr. Atanasoff was trying to solve systems of linear equations required for his physics research. At the time, an expert mathematician needed about 8 hours to solve a set of 8 equations using mechanical calculators like this Monroe machine. Atanasoff found that analog devices were too unreliable for this scale of work. They required perfect mechanical precision. A single gear slipping meant the final answer was wrong. During a winter drive to Illinois, Atanasoff realized that to gain speed and accuracy, he had to move away from mechanical parts and toward electronic switching. In 1939, with a $650 grant from the college, he hired a graduate student named Clifford Barry. Together, they began building the machine that would be known as the ABC. The specific mathematical requirements of 1930s physics are what forced this move from physical counting to electronic calculation. The ABC was designed around 4 key innovations. First, it would calculate using direct logic rather than counting pulses like a mechanical adding machine. Second, it would use vacuum tubes to perform that logic at electronic speeds. Third, and most importantly, it would abandon the human decimal system in favor of base 2 binary arithmetic. While decimal systems require hardware to track 10 different positions, binary logic maps directly to the simple on and off states of an electronic switch. Atanasoff built 30 separate add-subtract circuits that could operate simultaneously using this binary logic. This shift to machine-centric binary counting provided the logical foundation that every modern computer uses today. To make the machine practical, Atanasoff needed a way to store those binary numbers. This led to his fourth innovation, regenerative capacitor memory. This image shows the system's pair of rotating drums, each of which was covered in 1,600 capacitors to hold binary data. The drums turned at exactly 1 revolution per second, with the entire computing engine synchronized to that rotation. However, capacitors naturally leak power over time. If the electrical charge faded, the data would be lost. Atanasoff's solution was a jogging process that periodically refreshed the electrical charge of the capacitors as the drum spun. This is the same principle used by dynamic random access memory, or DRAM, which requires a periodic refresh to maintain the data currently stored in your phone or laptop. The ABC was a specialized machine. It could solve equations, but it could not be programmed to perform any other task. In 1941, John Mauchly visited Atanasoff in Iowa. He spent days at Atanasoff's home, where he was given full access to the ABC prototype and its technical manuals. Mauchly and Eckert then used these electronic principles to develop a far more ambitious project for the Army, the ENIAC. Completed in 1945, the ENIAC was room-sized and Turing-complete. Unlike the ABC, it could be reprogrammed for a wide variety of numerical problems. But where Atanasoff had used elegant binary, the ENIAC used decimal arithmetic. It relied on electronic ring counters to emulate the wheels of a mechanical calculator. Programming the machine was an intensive physical task. Technicians had to manually set thousands of switches and patch cables, a process that often took weeks to set up for a single problem. Despite its programmability, the ENIAC's fundamental ability to calculate electronically was a concept Mauchly had seen working in Iowa years earlier. When the legal battle began in 1967, it became the longest federal trial in U.S. history to that point. The scope was massive: 135 trial days and 33,000 pieces of evidence, including an autobiography by Charles Babbage. Honeywell's defense hinged on proving that Mauchly's 1941 visit to Atanasoff was the actual source of the ENIAC's core electronic logic. To prove the ABC actually worked, engineers built a working replica of Atanasoff's modules to demonstrate the machine's capability to the court. The case had moved past a simple corporate disagreement and into a forensic audit of who actually built the first digital computer. In 1973, Judge Earl Larson handed down a decision that invalidated the ENIAC patent. The ruling stated Eckert and Mauchly did not invent the electronic digital computer, but instead derived at subject matter from one Dr. John Vincent Atanasoff. With the patent gone, the threat of royalties vanished. Companies like IBM and Honeywell could now develop computer technology without paying a gatekeeper. It was such a drastic reversal that computer architect Gordon Bell referred to the judgment as the disinvention of the computer. By legally recognizing Atanasoff's work, the court placed the fundamental architecture of the computer into the public domain, owned by nobody. Once the legal barriers were removed, the concepts behind electronic computing were free to evolve, fueling a period of rapid development across the entire industry. Mauchly and Eckert undeniably brought the computer to the world through the ENIAC's programmability, but Atanasoff and Barry provided the digital logic that made it possible. So who do you consider the father of the computer? The engineers who scaled it, or the physicist who first proved it could work? The openness of our digital landscape today was secured, in part, by the moment these concepts were legally returned to the public domain. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more.